First of all, just want to welcome everybody from all over the world. My name is Angie Saunders, and I have been working with Dr. Peter Litchfield in the Professional School of Behavioral Health Sciences probably for just about over 5 years, and just specifically recently in helping them as Director of Admissions for the Professional School of Behavioral Health Sciences, just helping answer questions and helping to guide people into the new CapnoLearning Breathing Practitioner program. So we are also joined by Lisa Cush, who's also one of the other co-facilitators of the course. So I'm very excited to get into this today. You all probably know Dr. Peter Litchfield. He is the president of the school, as well as one of the co-founders of Better Physiology and co-creator of the CapnoTrainer Go specifically. And so today we're going to cover a little bit about, what brings us here around breathing and behavioral health sciences, learning a lot about how breathing affects our physiology, our psychology, and learning how to work with breathing to be able to use it as understand it as a phenomenon, as Peter likes to say. In fact, before we get into this, I wrote a quote by Peter that we were having in a conversation last week, and it really stuck out that it's about bringing respiration to the work, and the reason is because breathing is should be looked at as a phenomenon, not as a tool. And that's one thing that I've really realized in this work with Peter is just how much of a phenomenon this is. So I want to hand it over to Peter now to go ahead and share with us a little bit more about, what brings you here and a little bit more about the course as well.
Well, thank you, everybody, for being here. It's definitely a pleasure to meet with you. I see a lot of familiar faces out there, people I know really well, and some people I know just a little bit, and others of you who are complete strangers. One thing that Angie didn't mention is where she's from. She's in Australia right now. So in our school, we're all spread out. We have people from all over. I noticed one other faculty member of ours, Wolf Fellner. He's actually a professor of economics who got involved in what we're doing quite a number of years ago. And we've been working together ever since. So there's quite a variety of people here in terms of how they relate to what we're doing and my, previous acquaintance with them. I already mentioned Lee Lance, who was a very dear friend for a very long time. And I'm so happy to see her. So we have in our school, a lot of you are familiar with our school, a lot of you are not. The Professional School of Behavioral Health Sciences, we started up back in 2012. We started offering a master's degree in breathing science. And we had lots of people, physicians, physiologists, and psychologists teaching that program. And we created a field we call breathing behavior analysis, which is really fashioned after behavior therapy and behavior analysis at large. That's an immense field. Many people are part of that field. And we've taken the tools that field has offered and brought it to what we call breathing behavior, rather than breathing as a tool that people use to somehow manipulate to achieve some objective, like something like relaxation. Our work is about breathing itself. It's not about using it to do something else. That is, people have learned breathing habits that have profound effects on their lives. And I'm sure most of you have heard the statistics previously mentioned in other places that about 60% of the ambulance runs in the larger cities in the United States are a result of dysfunctional breathing where people come in with low carbon dioxide levels that bring on all kinds of major symptoms. And it's been estimated, depending on what survey you look at, that anywhere from 10 to 25% of the US population is suffering with carbon dioxide deficits, not on an ongoing basis, but from time to time as you get triggers that bring on these habits that lower these CO2 levels, and then you get these radical symptoms. So you have this immense number of people riding by ambulance to the hospital for help around this subject. But the fact of the matter is they don't really get much help. They may get a prescription of some kind, a drug prescription, they get sent home, maybe a referral or something like that. But nobody really understands that people really learn breathing habits that get triggered at certain places and times like any other habit. So if you bring that whole science about what habits are about to breathing, you see breathing in a very, very different way. The interesting thing about breathing behaviors compared to other behaviors is that when you change breathing behavior, you change physiology. That's not really true if I move my arms in a particular way or I behave in, lots of different ways. It doesn't really alter my physiology dramatically. But when you change breathing behavior, you can change physiology on a dime in seconds, where you get major outcomes that have a profound effect on that person's life, where they don't understand where those symptoms are coming from, and neither do the healthcare practitioners that see them. They interpret those symptoms as a function of something else, and so they're mistakenly, diagnosed because they aren't looking at the breathing end of things. And if you get into that literature, it's just amazing. The physiology of it is fundamental. I mean, there's no question about the impact of changing the breathing on respiration and how it generates all kinds of psychological and physiological behavioral changes that aren't recognized. Okay, and so we go about in our lives not understanding what these symptoms or deficits, better said, or these changes in our psychology and physiology, we attribute it to other things. So breathing behavior analysis is about trying to sort that out. What are the habits? Are there dysfunctional habits? Are those habits responsible for symptoms, deficits, and other kinds of changes or not? And if they are there, then what's triggering them? What's the history behind those habits? What are the outcomes of those habits that are sustaining them? Because there needs to be an outcome of some kind that keeps it in place. So you're looking for the origin of the habit, you're looking for the triggers that control it, you're looking for the outcomes that control it. And it gets into some, fascinating kinds of considerations or different kinds of breathing habits that we talk about that compromise physiology. Now, CapnoLearning, which we're here to talk about and tell you about our program, CapnoLearning is a subset of breathing behavior analysis, because what it does is it addresses respiration. We talk about breathing, you talk about a lot of different things, but one obvious, profound piece of it is respiration, after all. And how many people who do breathing work even address respiration at all? Very few of them, and very few of them really know anything about the physiology of respiration. And there are all kinds of myths and pseudoscience kinds of things out there that talk about breathe this way, breathe that way, because it's going to be great in respect to respiration, but most of it's uninformed. And of course, there's lots of reasons to breathe different ways, all these different techniques that are used for these different things. I'm not addressing those except from the standpoint of how someone may be uninformed as to how those techniques really blend in with what respiration's about. So you get a kind of pseudoscience that can build up around breathing in respect to respiration. And that's a real problem that needs to be addressed. Now, when you look at all those ambulance runs I talked about, that's just the tip of the iceberg, because most people don't call for an ambulance when they have a breathing problem. They go see a practitioner, they read a book, they learn this, they learn that, and so on. And so you're talking about maybe that ambulance run is the tip of the iceberg, maybe less than 1% of the people who are really dealing with problems around breathing habits. And the problem is that no one's really trained to be able to assess breathing from a behavioral perspective, to understand it psychophysiologically. See, from my point of view, physiology is psychological by its very nature. That in essence, physiology is psychophysiological, if you will, right on down to the cellular level, where systems, these biological systems collect information. They save that information, they organize the information, they use the information. That's what biological systems do. That's what they're so good at. It's like having a computer, not understanding there's any software in there. And you're trying to fix everything by talking about motherboards and hard drives and everything. You don't even recognize there's an accounting software package in the system. That's how a lot of healthcare is conducted. We don't look at the programmability of the system. That's what our work ultimately is about. It's the programmability of things, of the biology. And in this case, we're talking about the programmability of breathing in respect to the respiratory requirements in the system. So CapnoLearning, what is that about? It's about technology, it's about physiology, and it's about psychology. It's bringing those things together. And the technology is really capnography. I didn't get into capnography because I thought it was a good business. I got into it because it was really exciting when my best of all my friends over the past 55 years, I'll be turning 84 actually here in a couple of months. But my best friend Bob Freed, of all those different years, he showed up with a capnometer one day, and I immediately understood the relevance of that and started to really include it in everything I was doing, because you can really look at physiology, at respiratory physiology live. You can't do that with an oximeter. You can't do that by just looking at breathing mechanics. How fast are you breathing? How slow are you breathing? Are you using the diaphragm and so on? That can be quite unrelated to respiration. You can be breathing very fast and have perfect respiration, or you can be breathing really slowly and have bad respiration, because it's about the carbon dioxide regulation. It's a fundamental piece of chemistry in the body, and if you don't have it, you die. You need it. Your body makes it, and it dumps some of it, and it keeps some of it. And you need to keep the right amount of it. So CapnoLearning is about habits that disturb that fundamental physiology and how to identify those habits, and then to help people through those habits and arm them with some interventions as well in case there's a relapse with those habits and so on. So this CapnoLearning program really is a subset of our master's degree program. It's a subset of our professional diploma program. It's a subset of these things, but it's the basic considerations about breathing and respiration. And the problem is, to give you an example, one of the people that Lisa works with is a physician out in California. He has a brain sleep center at Stanford. He's a professor there, and he has about 100 capnometers that he's acquired from us over the past months. But, the problem was he understood how important carbon dioxide is in looking at sleep disorders, but he had no training in it. He didn't know what to do. What is he going to do with all these clients? He has no idea. So what we've done is been able to supply him, of course, with Lisa, who's headed all that up, to supply him with the people that he needs. And then he rents out all these different people with sleep apnea problems and so on. And then Lisa comes in and sees them on the internet and does sessions with them. Okay, so we've trained a lot of people over the years. Lisa is one of our stars, if not our star. I just don't want to offend people who really aren't on the same category she is. But anyway, we've done a lot with the U.S. Special Forces. Scott Sonnen, who's a major player in the U.S. Special Forces, has been doing our work for a long time, got his master's degree from us in this kind of a work. What we want to do is we want to train enough people that we can really get them out there to provide the know-how. And here's another example. This is what instigated this new program we have. The National Health Service in the UK, they understand the importance of addressing unexplained symptoms. And they, in a study they did back in the early 2000s, demonstrated over half of all the patients who are in the NHS system, the National Health Service system, over half of them have only unexplained symptoms, no accompanying identifiable organic problems. What are they going to do? Imagine the cost of that. What are they going to do? So when we did some presentations there, David Beals, a physician in the UK, and myself, when they saw how a breathing habit can play such a role in bringing on all those unexplained symptoms, they got really excited. They went out and they employed over 10,000 cognitive behavior therapists who were weekend trained people, but no knowledge of the physiology of breathing, no knowledge really about habit analysis is about or anything. So just recently, in some conversations with them, they were saying, hey, we get capnometers, we can actually get some numbers, we can actually say something about the problems, why they're suffering with some of those symptoms. And the problem is that we don't know how to do the work. We don't know anyone who knows how to do the work. We don't know how to identify the problem, and we really can't help people once we know if they have the problem, who's going to help them? So you have to supply the people. Well, we don't have that many people trained. We need to train a lot of people. We really need people on board to do this. I mean, there are tens of millions of Americans suffering with these habits, with the symptoms that go along with them, with no idea where they're coming from. And neither do the physicians, neither do the psychologists, neither do any of those people. They don't even look at it. They really aren't looking at physiology as a behavioral phenomenon. And this, for me, the way I got into all this breathing stuff is because that's where I came from in my original training as a graduate student. It's about physiology as a behavioral phenomenon, and I bought into it in a big way. And that's what I'm really doing now. And I really want to get this on a larger scale. And that means we have to train a lot of people. And I'm inviting those of you who are thinking about it to consider it seriously. So let me tell you about the program. Angie, do you want to say anything before I talk about the program? Lisa, Lisa might say something about how she got into this and how it's affected her life. Lisa, you want to maybe say something?
Yep. Let's bring Lisa on. Yeah, that'd be great. Lisa, share a little bit about who you are, what you're doing. You are the co-facilitator of the CapnoLearning program. So, we'd love to hear a little bit more of your story about, what got you here and how this is working for you.
Sure. Thank you. It's been an absolute phenomenal journey since I first met Dr. Peter Litchfield in 2017. Our very first conversation was I called him while I was taking a different type of breathwork training. And I said, I want to know, Mr. Litchfield, why this is working. And he said to me, that's not working the way you think. You need to come to our school. And so I did. And it not only helped me to refine my approach within the things that I was learning at the time, but it shifted my entire trajectory. If I back up a little bit, I come from an education background. I used to work with gifted and special needs learners, specifically from a behavioral point of view and creating curriculum. And from there moved into mental health services and have spent 28 years creating a recovery home for women suffering from very serious mental illness, which again brought all of my skills forward. Throughout that time, I also studied midwifery and attended hundreds and hundreds of home births and hospital births. And all of those things were kind of moving together when I had my own car accident and had a very lengthy recovery, which is a story for another time. But during that is when I started focusing more and more on what is happening in my physiology that is delaying my recovery. I found breathwork practitioners saying they had an answer. Through that, I said about why. I found Dr. Litchfield, and having taken the CapnoLearning program, which at that time was slightly different, then completing the master's degree program, it has completely shifted my professional life. I now have moved away from I've taken a big break, retired from attending births at all. I have started to slowly shut down my recovery home for women, as these women have done so incredibly well. The last few are just moving out of my home as we speak, because I have a full-time practice seeing people, working with them from a breath first lens. I'm a registered psychotherapist in Canada. And my focus is, how do we see wellness if we don't have the breath sorted first? And we might have unexplained symptoms. We might have a pretty significant diagnosis. And yet, is that diagnosis going to hold water if we address the breathing dysfunction first? So addressing dysfunctional breathing habits is my first door with all of my clients. Everything from children coming in who've had traumatic births, behavioral issues, learning issues, adults who are going through depression and anxiety and recovery. I work with a lot of athletes, hockey players, football players, and looking at each of them from a breath first perspective. We can't optimize anything if we don't have our respiration in line. And that has been the big change for me in my life, is moving forward. I'm so excited to be now creating programming, not just with Dr. Litchfield, but creating unit plans and applications for K-12 in the education system, creating courses for pregnancy for midwives and obstetricians to consider hypocapnia during the preterm and postnatal time for people. And then working in the counseling realm, creating learning programs for psychologists and psychiatrists alike to start to look at this through a behavioral lens and see how that might support and even clarify not just diagnoses, but outcomes. So that's where I'm at right now.
So in any event, thank you very much, Lisa. And I'd like to take some time to describe what the program's about and look at some of the application areas that are associated with it. We have people on Olympic teams trained in CapnoLearning. We have, specific Olympic athletes. We have the British Navy. We have the U.S. Special Forces. We have the New Zealand Special Forces. We have police departments that do the work. We have Kaiser Hospital doing the work. We have major hospitals. We have, we're in 60 different countries where we've introduced CapnoLearning to some extent. It sounds like there's a lot, right? But in reality, it's just a very small 60 countries, great, but there's just a handful of people in each place. But to really get this out, we have to go to another level. And so I'd like to just show, I have 5 slides, and so we can go through those quickly. And so I'm going to share my slides here. Here we go. Okay, so I'm just going to start this slideshow here, make it a little easier. And here we go. Oops. There, whoops. What is going on here? Let me try it again.
Yeah, and then we'll address all the questions
Okay,
at the
there we are. There we are. Okay.
about questions.
Okay, can you see that? Can you see it?
Yep, can see it. That's good.
Okay. Okay. So our school really is all about breathing sciences. And these are the people you can contact if you're interested. The professional school directly. This is its email, education@bp.edu. And then myself and my email, Sandra Raymer, she and I actually founded the school. And we've been together developing CapnoLearning together now for 24 years, something like that. She's heads up, she's the director actually of education and heads up all the practicum work, Sandra Raymer. And then the director of admissions is Angie. And then our faculty chairperson is Lisa here right now. There's our registration website. And then there's our basic website here as well. This is what our mission is about when it comes to breathing science. It's about helping people improve health and performance through the application of behavioral learning principles to breathing physiology. That's what we do. And this kind of tells you what CapnoLearning is about. It's about bringing together technology, physiology, and behavioral science. And it's all about essentially determining whether there are behaviors and habits that are getting in the way of respiration and what the components of those habits are all about. I've got various publications, including a book. If you're interested, I can get you that. I have 2 chapters coming out in an airway medicine book where they wanted me to write a chapter on a behavioral perspective of respiration and breathing and how they're related and not related. If you're interested in any kind of publications that have recently come out, I'd be glad to send them to you. But the work is ultimately about realigning breathing mechanics with respiratory chemistry so it becomes self-regulatory. So you're not manipulating your breathing to make the respiration right, but there are reflexes that control the respiration, and it's about allowing those reflexes to do their job, whether you're stressed or not. A lot of people will blame bad breathing on emotion, for example. The system physiologically isn't set up to be like that. You can be very emotional and have very good respiration. You can be very stressed and have excellent respiration. You don't need to relax to have good respiration. The system was built so that you can have good respiration through all the different circumstances that you might encounter in your life. So it's about allowing those reflexes to work. It's about aligning those breathing mechanics, which are behaviors, with the respiratory requirements. and how they work together and how they don't work together and how you can bring them together. Very specific. These are the different professional settings in which our work, you can see people doing our work. Everywhere from the one end, from alternative healthcare down to yoga on the other end. A lot of people we see in yoga who've been in the yoga field for years who have very significant dysfunctional breathing habits. We see a lot of people who do things like Buteyko training, for example, I've had to work with, who have serious overbreathing problems, serious CO2 deficit problems, although their expertise is in CO2 management, but not aware of the habits that they've learned. So there's just so many different areas of application, whether it's chiropractic, fitness training, orthodontics, an awful lot of work. In fact, that airway medicine book that I was invited to write these 2 chapters for is a book put out by orthodontists and dentists and physicians. So there's a lot of people in orthodontics doing this work. People who do meditation, public speaking, personal coaching, performing arts, like Wolfgang Fellner, who's one of our faculty members who's here today. He sees musicians, and he works with musicians in Europe, in mainland Europe there. So there's just all kinds of different applications. I'm going to ask Wolf to say something if he's still here in a moment. So in any event, these are some of the application areas. This is really what the program is. In this case, it's really worth 6 academic units. We're a licensed school in the state, and we have a trimester system, so it's a 15-week program. It's worth 6 academic units in case it's of any interest to you. It's also approved for 100 hours of CE, professional CE education. These are the different, we have 10 different modules, and these are pre-recorded modules. They range from 3 hours to 5 hours long. There's 10 of them, and they're very specific. Like, first module is physiology. Then we have technology, psychology, interviewing, testing, self-exploration, self-regulation, which is, the final outcome, where, a habit is an automatic phenomenon. The idea is that you self-regulate. You don't need to step in and take your breathing over. In fact, that's very often the problem that we see in people. They step in to take over the breathing. The idea is to allow that breathing. Unfortunately, however, the body itself learns dysfunctional habits, separate from you as an individual, and those have to be identified. There needs to be a partnership between the individual and the psychology embedded in their physiology. So self-regulation, applications, demonstrations, and business, all of these things are included in this program. It's a step-by-step program to teach you how to do this kind of work, which is about essentially optimizing respiration. Now, you need a capnometer for it. Frankly, you can't do it without a capnometer. And we have developed software. It took us 5 years to develop the software we have, with all kinds of built-in protocol, practicums and so on. We keep evolving that software. It operates on cell phones. We have an app that works on iPads and on iPhones and Android phones. We have a database in the cloud, a basic database system. Then we have an advanced professional database system in the cloud for doing all kinds of report generation and managing large numbers of instruments with lots of trainers at a specific organization, like at a hospital. So we have a very sophisticated system that we've developed that you can become a part of with the software. That software is necessary during the program because of all the practicums that are assigned, all the work that we've done over the years. It's integrated into that program. And it took, as I say, 5 years of my time, our chief engineer's time, and others involved in making it happen. So we're very excited about getting more people involved. And so those are 10 recorded modules. And then associated with each module, there are practicums. And you do a total really of 100 hours of practicum on your own, but it's supervised. and you go through these 10 modules. There's a short multiple choice test following each module. When you finish a module, you can watch your progress. And when you finish the module, then you have the option of taking a multiple choice. They're mostly 12 items in those tests. And if you pass it, then the second module becomes available to you, or the next module. And then at the very end, if you've completed all 10, then you finish the academic portion of it. If you flunk a test, a multiple choice test, it just resets the module. So you re-listen to the module and retake the test. And it just takes you through it all automatically. And then all those grades are combined automatically for a course grade at the end. You have a personal interview, a 2-hour interview with an expert like Sandra Raymer, or someone like that, Wolf Fellner or Lisa Cush or somebody at the end. And then we look over all your practicums, because your practicums automatically show up in the school database. When you work on your session, your practicum, and you do, say, an hour session with someone, that session is saved in our database, and we can go and see it. And the volunteer you're working with can go and see it also, and you can go and see it. And the data report is there. And you can save your notes while you're doing your sessions. You can take snapshots of the screens and save those to the sessions. You can take audio notes and save those to the session. And then they're all in the cloud, where I or someone in the faculty can go and see it, and your volunteer can go and see it, and you can go and see it. Everybody has their own login to that. Everyone has to have an instrument. And then when you have the instrument, of course, you have your own database, your own access that no one has access to. But when you're in the program, you have a second login where you can go in and look at everything you're doing with the school. So everything is very nicely automated. We spent a long time putting it together so you can get through this program. And you have to plan, if you think, well, how much time is this going to take me? You have to plan on a minimum of 10 hours a week to get through the program. I mean, that, realistically, and doing your practicum work and listening to the modules, you're looking at a minimum of 10 hours a week. You have to make that commitment. We'd like to see you spending maybe 15 hours a week during those 15 weeks, so that you're really good at this when you come out. It's very specific. It's not all about breathing behavior analysis, which is our diploma program, but it's all about how you can help someone re-regulate their respiration through the breathing habits, that is, the mechanics that they've learned to implement at certain times in certain places automatically without their really understanding of what they're doing in a particular moment. Like, you'll find someone, for example, the kind of thing that you'll see, kind of interesting, you'll find someone that when they start to talk, that linkage between the talking and the respiration, the breathing, the mechanics the person is using to talk, because when you talk, you have to essentially need breathing to be able to talk. You can't talk without breathing. So, you're manipulating the breathing when you're talking, but you're also respirating. And those things can get desynchronized really easily. So you've no doubt seen lots of people, while they're talking to you, they take a deep breath. Every time they come to an end of a sentence or a thought or something, they take a deep breath. And what happens is they lose CO2 in seconds. And when they do that, they lose blood supply to the brain. So the blood supply to the brain can be reduced up to 50% in 20 to 30 seconds. And you're out to lunch, you're in a brain fog. And now you're here you are in a social situation, and you're trying to function, and you can't really focus on what you're talking about, and you can't really remember what you were doing, and you get what's called disinhibition, so you get triggering of emotion in the brain as a result of this neuronal compromise without going into the physiology. And now, if you were anxious, you're getting really anxious because of how the physiology's changed, but you're also nervous as hell because you can't remember what you're talking about, what you're doing. And what comes from that is a person becomes afraid of socializing. They become afraid of going to parties. They become afraid of going here or going there, because what's going to happen is they start to breathe in this way that compromises them. So now you have the foundation for developing agoraphobia, an experience with breathing that led to that linkage that broke down between the talking, the breathing around talking, and meeting the respiratory requirements got disconnected, And now you have all these interpretations of the outcomes that are misinterpretations, not only by the person who's experiencing it, but also by the people that they see. They don't understand how absolutely profound these effects are. Again, 60% of the ambulance runs in New York City. What's that all about? What is that all about? Okay, so this plays a major role in that. So anyway, then we have we have 5 2-hour live Q&A sessions where we go over each, all the modules, or people have questions. And then we have these personal interviews that we do along the way. And then we have, of course, an orientation session that we start with. That's really what the program is about. And we're inviting you to join us. We would love to see you a part of this enterprise so that we can make it real out there. I mean, it's a real need. I mean, it's a real profound kind of a thing. It's not more or less. We know what it's about. This is what happens when you breathe this way. You get this change. You get these changes in chemistry. You get these symptoms. And we can do something about it if we have people who are willing to take the time to learn about it and integrate it into what they're doing, whether it's psychology, medicine, nursing, coaching and athletics, or just a breathing practice that you're in as a breath worker. So I hope to see you. So let's open it for questions or comments. Maybe we can start with Wolf, if he's still present, to see what he might have to offer.
Yeah, that'd
Wolf,
be great.
are you there? I don't see whether Wolf is there.
Hi,
Can
hi
Wolf
everyone. Can you
Oh.
hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Okay, great. I'm on my phone, so I'm not sure it's working best, but yeah.
Hi, Wolf. Good.
Hi Angie. Hi everybody.
Wolf is in Austria. He's in Vienna. Go ahead, Wolf.
Right. Was there any specific question, or
You might say something about what you're doing right now with the institute you've set up for teaching CapnoLearning, or how you sort of sidestepped out of economics somewhat into breathing.
Right. Yeah, it was nice for me to hear Lisa talking about wellness and the relevance of wellness and how we have to sort out breathing first, because my research as an economist was about time welfare, how we can think about welfare and wellness in terms of time use rather than in terms of money use, and how that changes our view of the economy and the decisions we take. The thing about breathing, I was also, becoming aware of that when I was hearing you talking, Peter, was really this unconscious things that happen, learning, to know more about yourself and to inform people about their own unconscious behaviors. And those are patterns of thinking, those are patterns of, breathing, those are all other kinds of related patterns, how they deal with stress, how they deal with performance anxiety, how they deal with so many different things in their lives. So what I really, really like from a personal perspective, but also from a perspective as a practitioner, is to be able to work with people at a very profound level. And when people are open to this, to meeting themselves at that profound level, they're really changing their personality. So we're talking breathing personality, but we're talking about the person itself. So if really someone is willing to work with you in working on their breathing, they're working with you at so many different levels. And Peter hasn't mentioned, I mean, there are so many extensions to the CapnoLearning system that are not part of this program, but they're possible for you to use also with the working with the nervous system, working with muscles, other kinds of things. So the technology that has been created over those last couple of years is really amazing, and it needs people to know how to work with that and to bring that to life for people who can benefit from it. And that's why I also started my own teaching institution here in Vienna, in the kind of, for the German-speaking countries around Germany, Austria, Switzerland, but the whole European Union, and to make breathing science really something that becomes, something that becomes more visible. Because what I experience is that we have breath work everywhere, and we have, more and more breathwork practitioners that, that confirm this instrumental idea of breathing, or manifest that in a way. So I think breathing science is really something that we need. And my science background, together with Peter's background, also in science, but also in breathing, I had another background in breathing that was more in, the psychological part and the breathwork part. But he, for me, was bringing the science into the breathing, and I had no idea what that would change, how that would change the way I look at it, and how I would work, and how I would make that the main part of my professional life. So I think that has really been an exciting journey, and I'm really curious of what the next steps will be and where I will end up with that. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Wolf.
Thank you, Wolf.
Turn it back to you, Angie. You're the chairperson.
Yeah, well, I think, what I'm hearing in both what Wolf said and what Lisa said is there is a lot of, people teach a lot about the mechanics of breathing, and maybe they might touch a little bit on the psychology, but no one is talking about how chemistry affects the physiology and the psychology. So instead of learning about physiology or learning about psychology, when you add this sort of like third dimension to it, it's like it fills in all the missing links. So in my experience, this has been one of those things where it's like, I did 15, nearly 20 years of self-development education before I came to know breathing and breath work and breathing work. And what I really realized was that I knew how to feel better, but there was a missing link between knowing how to feel better and actually feeling better. And this was that one element that just made all the difference. And then, of course, working with clients around the world in just this basic framework that you teach, Peter. I think one of the main things is this AIR framework you teach, which is, it stands for awareness, intervention, and regulation. And what was most profound about this is sometimes awareness was the intervention. And, that's what I love about CapnoLearning and about capnometry is that it's client-centered work. You're not telling somebody to do a technique. You're helping your client to learn something about themselves that has meaningful change for that can create meaningful change for them. And sometimes the awareness is enough for somebody to change the trajectory of what they were going to do with their health and wellness regime. So, I definitely feel that this is the wave of the future. This is breathing. We look at it like, there's breathing and breath work is different. And this is breathing work. This is breathing because it's something that is sustainable for the individual. So important on that.
I just saw somebody else who I didn't know he was here, and that's Chris Gilbert. Hi, Chris. It's great to see you. Chris has been on our faculty off and on. He's back on now, and in any event, I'm really happy to see him. I didn't even notice that. There's a lot of people here, so I just saw his picture there. Anyway, okay, Angie, that was great. Thank you for that. So where would you like to go from here?
We do have a question in the chat, and I think that it's a very relevant question that probably most people do have. And I would like to just see if I can have you touch on this, Peter. So the question is, could this program qualify someone who doesn't have a medical or psych degree and be recognized by doctors as a supportive and credentialed practitioner for treatment of patients with dysfunctional breathing? The follow-on is, I gather professionals in the health industry would be better placed and respected to do breathing instruction?
Well, this is a very good question. And that you have to ask yourself, who is your audience? Who are you working with? I gave you a big list of the different application areas. So there are people who come from very, very different backgrounds. For instance, we worked a lot with one of the coaches of the Brazilian shooting team that won the silver medal there, and we were working with him. Now, his background was obviously immediately appropriate to that particular sport in Brazil. Those were his clients. So they aren't asking about his credibility from the standpoint of, healthcare. They're interested basically in hitting a target. And he already had a reputation because he was a coach for the Olympic team. So it wasn't about his having to establish anything except, saying he has a credential. This is helpful to him. He has a credential at that time, it was just certified breathing behavior analyst. Now, of course, we have the CapnoLearning Practitioner, certified CapnoLearning Practitioner program. And so that goes behind his name. So as a coach, as a recognized coach, people know who he is. He's also someone who's been trained in breathing science and its potential applications in a high performance environment. Another example would be, one of he's just become a faculty member, Dylan McKay in the UK, who is a special forces person in New Zealand, where he has brought this work into the British Navy. He's bringing it to the top special forces people in the UK right now. He's bringing it to bomb squads where they de-arm bombs, that someone has to go in and dismantle the bomb squads in Ireland and in the UK. And they've gotten very involved in this. And, his credentials are as a special forces person. He has a really good reputation. And so now he has a diploma through us in breathing behavior analysis, which is now part of his resume in terms of what his areas of expertise are. So it's about your audience. Who is your audience? What experience do you have with that audience? Let's say you're going to work with people who have asthma. I don't recommend that you do that if you don't know anything about asthma patients. You don't know anything about that medical condition. You really have no business doing a lot with that kind of person unless you're working closely with someone who maybe is a pulmonary physician or a social worker or a respiratory therapist, someone who knows about the subject matter so that you can do meaningful work without making a mistake, because you can make a mistake. Okay, so you need to have a background in the audience with the audience that you're working with. And so your credentials are what carry you forward along with this recognition for being an expert in this area. That's why we created the master's degree. That's why we did all these things, to bring some recognition to people who do practical breathing science work, because there isn't anything. What is there? You can be a pulmonary doc. You can be a respiratory therapist, which is really a technician. It has nothing to do with breathing habits. And you may be a behavioral psychologist like I was. My whole background was in, I have a PhD in experimental psychology. It was all about learning theory, as we say, but physiology, learning theory, biological psychology, and so on. But, it had nothing to do with working with people who have breathing problems. So we're trying to establish that. That's what we're doing. So you take the credentials you already have, the experience you already have with a particular audience, and you integrate this into that. And then you carry that label, that recognition, that diploma, that certification with you to essentially be able to make the statement that I've been trained in doing this work. I know how to work with capnometers. I know about breathing habits, and I can really contribute to the kinds of problems that people in this audience are having to address. Does that answer your question?
I find that that working with capnometry is builds credibility in itself. To be able to read the waveforms, to be able to understand, how breathing works, it just brings a whole nother layer. And as you were saying, Peter, I love this. It's like you don't really have to go out and get a degree in psychology to understand.
No,
I mean,
because
it would help, but
well,
this gives
it
you the
depends
basic.
on what you're going to do. Like, I'm a psychologist, so I come from that perspective when I talk necessarily. I don't come from the perspective of someone who's coaching someone in, international football, soccer. I don't come from that. I can't speak to that. So I come from where I'm coming from. Someone else who knows all about performance will introduce this in a different kind of a way. It's the same kinds of principles, but psychology is a part of everyone's life. Everyone, the communication that we have, with each other is all about psychology, and so to an extent, we're all psychologists in our lives. It's just that psychologists are trained very specifically, in areas that come from the science in psychology into the practical applications, and they specialize in that. The idea is when we do an interview with someone, it's about having a conversation. A breathing interview is a conversation, and you help guide that person in learning about what they've learned from a breathing perspective that's having an impact on them. And then you can guide them into learning something new. It's educational. It's not a psychological analysis. It's an exploration. It's an educational enterprise. It's all about that individual. I don't come in there as so much as an expert, as a guide in helping the person explore themselves to understand how they're breathing and how it might be affecting them and what they can do about it. This is not therapy. If you want to do therapy, you go get a license. You need a license to do therapy. You're not doing therapy. If you think you want to do therapy and you don't have a license, then you better look for a profession where you can get licensed. But this is about education. This is on the ground floor. These people with all these problems aren't getting any help. That NHS system there, those people aren't getting any help. There's lots of psychologists in there, lots of physicians, but they aren't getting any help. It's not working. Here's something very basic that can be learned, where you can really help someone and make a big difference. Not pretend to be a psychologist, not pretend to be a physician. This isn't medical. This isn't therapeutic. This is educational. And if you have experience in a particular audience, you bring it to that audience. So if you're an athletic coach, you do international football, soccer, you're bringing it into that work. What are you doing now? You're teaching them breathing, right? Always different areas, pregnancy, you want to name it. People are teaching breathing, but in most instances, they don't really have any understanding as to how that's tied together with respiration. Now you can bring that to them. Help them with that. You don't have to be a doctor, a psychologist. You can be an expert in education to help people, guide them in learning about themselves in regards to breathing, and then how they can go about maybe learning those habits, learning a different set of habits, along with some interventions that could be helpful in addition. So does that answer the question?
Yes, he said thank you. It does.
Sure.
And makes sense.
I get long-winded, sorry.
I don't mind. Yeah, and I think this is like I look at this as almost like it's a measure of wellness. And it is like
it's about real education that includes your own physiology, which is yours. It doesn't belong to the doctor. It doesn't belong to the psychologist. It's yours. You do with what you want. You explore it. Learn some new habits. Who out there is going to tell you about how to do that when it comes to breathing? Not many people, because they don't even see breathing as a behavior. It's a technique. We're going to manipulate the breathing to make things good for you. You're going to relax and you're going to do this. This isn't what our work is about. Our work is about how every day you go about your breathing without realizing and how it affects you, and how you can participate in it and make some changes. But being responsible is really important. There are ethics you need to follow in any profession. And doing this work, you really want to be well trained. You want to practice it and what it's about and get comfortable with it. And it takes time. You're not going to be comfortable in 10 hours. You've got to do a lot of it before you will get comfortable. And then you get really excited because you can see what you can really do to help someone help themselves. But it takes some commitment, some time. There's a lot to learn. And then you can go beyond that. Learn the basics. If you really want to get into breathing behavior analysis to a greater degree, where you're looking at other physiology like HRV and EMG and all these different things, you can do that. And you can go through our diploma program, for example, and address those things if you ever want to, ever get to that level and you want to do that. But you don't have to. You can do just great things helping people getting that respiration online again and reconnect it with those breathing behaviors that you've learned, those habits that you've learned.
Mm, yep. Yeah, very, very much so. I'd like to, if it's all right, I'd like to bring Lisa. I'm going to put you on the spotlight if you don't mind. So, just to wrap up here as we come to the top of our hour, I would love to, as you are also presenting and teaching on this course, is there anything else that you would like to share or wrap up as we wrap up? Just with the audience on this, particular around this course, or what anything from your side.
Well, I think I would like to reiterate what Dr. Litchfield is saying about integrating this first in what you already know. And that as you use the time to get to know the unit, get to know the software, get to know how breathing looks, what does breathing behavior look like on a screen, so that you can help facilitate the explorations of your clients. And those clients might be you and your family member. You might be your own first client. These are terrific places to start. And as your analytical skills grow, you will see more and more ways to serve the clientele you're already working with within your professional realm. You may also see ways as you continue to start reaching out and reaching other parts of your community or other sectors. So this first program really is get your foot in the door, learn what it means to analyze a behavior that changes your physiology, and experience for yourself and your first few volunteer clients what a dramatic shift it makes in their life and in yours, and in your understanding of the interplay of the psychophysiology of breathing, how that changes your mechanics, your daily wellness. It also might change who you think you are in the world. And that's pretty brilliant. So I would close there.
Thanks a lot, Lisa.
That is absolutely brilliant. Well, what I would say is if anybody has any questions after this course, please feel free to email me at as@bp.edu, and I will make sure to put all of this in the notes for the recording, so that way everybody can get all the information that they need to find out more about the course and get your questions answered. We do start at the end of this month, so I believe June
28th, right. It's an orientation session, and that's when you begin the sequence of things.
And so the last chance to join will be the day before on June 27th. So if you've got any questions between now and then, we are here to support you and help you. And looks to me, I'm just looking to see if there's any other questions in the chat. Looks pretty good. All right, great. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today, wherever you are in the world, and spending some time with us. We appreciate you just even showing up, because this is just such, as you've heard, we're all very passionate about this. We feel like this is a huge, important missing link in the wellness industry today, and we'd love to invite you to explore more about how you can make a difference for your own personal clients, or even in your own life as well. So thank you for your time today again, and reach out if you have any questions, and we will see you hopefully soon. Have a great day. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.